Oh, hey there. I'm Artichoke, and I'm a high security lockpicker. Today, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to be picking through the most commonly found residential locks found throughout the United States. Chances are that if you live in the US, you own one of these locks. We're going to see how they hold up to high skilled picking attacks as I tell you a little bit about them. Let's start off with Kwikset. Kwikset entered the lock market in a big way in 1947 when Adolf Schuppe patented a lock which could be quickly changed without disassembling the whole doorknob mechanism. Hence the company name Kwikset. Today, Kwikset is the leading brand of residential locks and can be found on the front doors across America. Let's see how long it takes to pick open a Kwikset lock. The Brinks lock is a budget lock sold in big box stores. It's based off of the Kwikset KW1 keyway, and it's the worst possible lock that I have ever encountered. The Defiant is another lock which has the KW1 Kwikset keyway. It's a budget Home Depot brand lock. It too is a terrible, terrible lock. Let's take a look at Schlage. Walter Schlage was perhaps ahead of his time with his first patent in 1909, which was for a door lock that would turn on the lights in the room when opened. What really launched his company was in 1923, his patent for the bored cylindrical lock, which was an enormous commercial success. Prior to this design, door locks were mostly of the mortise variety. Schlage also patented and popularized the push-button doorknob in 1924, which to this day is commonly found in many residential bathroom doors. Let's take a look at how the Schlage SC1 keyway holds up to a picking attack. Severin Feierman was born in 1922 in Benzin, Poland. His family's hardware business was confiscated by the Nazis. Mr. Feierman survived the horrors of the Auschwitz concentration camp and immigrated to the U.S. with his family in 1946. Together, they purchased a small tool shop named Baldwin Tool and Die and quickly expanded into the manufacturing of luxury hardware. Today, Baldwin is owned by Spectrum Brands and are sister companies with Kwikset. Curiously, they implement the Schlage SC1 keyway. Linus Yale Sr. and son Linus Yale Jr. are credited for developing the modern pin tumbler lock mechanism, which is used almost universally on every American door. In 1844, Linus Yale Sr. patented a pin tumbler lock with a circular key that had 4 pins arranged 90 degrees apart. Linus Yale Jr. expanded on his father's work by further developing the pin tumbler lock. The most common keyway for the Yale lock is the Y1 paracentric keyway, which is very tricky to navigate and successfully pick. The paracentric keyway was developed in 1891 by Warren Taylor, who worked for Yale at the time. In his initial patent, he states, "To increase the difficulty of picking, I have devised a key cylinder having an improved form of keyway. Said keyway having projections which extend into from both sides past its center so that there is no space for the operation of a picking tool, however thin or flexible it may be." Yale locks are known for having security driver pins, which adds to the complexity of the pick. Yale Linus Jr. was the first to describe the concept of security drivers in his 1865 patent. In 1846, Henry Russell and Cornelius Irwin formed the Russell and Irwin Company. Later, combining their names, Russell and Irwin, to form Russwin. In the late 1800s, it would become the largest manufacturer of builders' hardware in the world. They were known for their extensive catalogs and ornate hardware. Today, Russwin locks are most often seen in older buildings on the East Coast. The lock that you see me picking now was taken from a commercial building. It uses ball bearings underneath the key pins to reduce wear to the lock. The use of ball bearings was pioneered by the Corbin Lock Company, which we will be discussing next. In 1849, Philip and Frank Corbin joined forces with Henry Doane after they each contributed $300 to start Doane, Corbin, and Company. Their first product was the ox ball. I'm going to do you a huge favor by recommending against searching the internet for the meaning of ox ball, and instead I'm going to tell you what it is. The ox ball is a decorative brass sphere which is fitted on the horn of an ox to prevent it from sharpening its horn. In 1905, Corbin and Russwin, two hardware manufacturer powerhouses, merged to form the American Hardware Corporation. Corbin Russwin eventually began manufacturing an amazing high-security lock called the Emhart High Security Locking System. This will be the subject of a future video. The jimmy-proof Siegel deadbolt was patented in 1913 by Samuel Siegel, a New York police officer who wanted a safer locking mechanism that would prevent the door from being forced or pried open. While the deadbolt may have been a remarkable innovation, the lock itself is not too difficult to pick. Lou Dexter took over as president of his father's door hardware company, National Brass, in 1932. He changed its name to Dexter Industries and by 1967 became one of the top 5 lock companies in the United States. The company changed hands and is now part of Allegion and is marketed as a budget version of the Schlage lock. Morris Falk started the independent lock company in 1922. They began as a manufacturer of key blinks and quickly gained success when they developed the universal code key cutting machine. This key cutting machine and ones just like it are used by locksmiths around the United States to duplicate keys. The Lockwood Manufacturing Company started off as a toy maker in 1878. 10 years later, it switched its production to hardware and locks. In 1931, Lockwood was purchased by the Independent Lock Company. The Lockwood L1 keyway is perhaps the most difficult of the standard keyways to pick produced by a U.S. company. Also, to clarify a point of common confusion, there are actually 2 Lockwood lock companies, one in the US and one in Australia. The Australian Lockwood Lock Company was started in 1934 by John Ogden, and it has changed ownership several times. It's currently run by the Swedish lock company Assa Abloy. The Aero Lock Company was a budget lock company founded in 1949 in Brooklyn, New York. It is currently owned by Assa Abloy. Joseph Sargent and his brothers owned a wholesale hardware company which eventually morphed into a hardware manufacturing company. During World War I and II, they focused their productions to aid in the war effort. Once the wars were over, they decided to limit their production to lock and door hardware. The Sargent line of locks is perhaps the finest quality of standard lock hardware available at the time as well as today. They are known for their exceptionally high manufacturing tolerances and are most commonly found in commercial installations. As we are nearing the end of this video, I wanted to wrap things up with a couple of final thoughts. First off, although US locks are not known for their high security compared to their European counterparts, I'm nonetheless proud of the rich history and ingenuity of our hardware makers. Second, in the spirit of the Locksport tradition, I have made a separate video which will show the unedited picking and gutting of all the locks that you have seen in this video. The link to this can be found in the description below. Finally, I hope that you enjoyed this video and perhaps learned something along the way. If you did, I'd love to see your support by subscribing to my channel and commenting below.